The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. This is Brian from Breaking Down Security. This is part 2 of our discussion with John Whalen. We were talking about risk management. We were talking about tools that you can use, one of which is Monday.com, which we talked about in part 1. If you didn't hear that, they are a tool, one that John uses for this. It's not the only tool out there for this, especially for graphing or to do GRC related items. I believe we talked more than once about on other podcasts about, if you don't have a GRC tool, Excel is a perfectly good tool to use until you've walked through the mire that is the GRC landscape, because every tool uses different tooling, has different requirements. You need to really talk to a lot of different stakeholders for that to make sure that you have, those GRC tools taking care of them from a stakeholder point of view. And not every tool will do everything. A lot of them that, at least in my opinion, found that things like vulnerability management was not even mentioned in there because, it wasn't considered a big enough deal. And that's been 2 or 3 years. So some of them have gotten better. GRCs are always a weighty, expensive kind of topic, and being able to track those risks, I think overarching is really the ultimate deal here. So we're going to continue our discussion with John Whalen. Hope you get more out of this. If you are, in the dark, go back and download part 1 if you'd like, or in the chat, the window for the podcast is a link to our YouTube channel where the entire discussion with him, stream with him, is available. So hope you have a great holiday, and we'll talk soon.
Great.
Okay. So what does it look like when you give somebody, from a client engagement, when you give a company this, or you give a director of InfoSec or director of IT or a CIO this, what's the first thing that they ask you on average? And I don't mean just because of the dashboard, but it's like, what is some of the first thoughts that you've had to deal with when they go, oh, that's a really big number, or, oh, well, we're not doing so bad. We only have like 3 failures or 4 failures. I mean, are we doing good? How do we stack up against other people? That kind of thing. I got that question asked a lot.
Some of the questions I've had recently are, so what does this mean to me?
Right.
And what I've really focused on is that this smaller investment is going to do a couple things. It's going to lead to optimization, right? Because we identified there's a failure, and it's going to lead to improvement. And for example, I used this project on an $8 million scope, or I used this tool on an $8 million scope, and we were able to cut 1.1% across about half a dozen what were going to be failures, right? So all of a sudden we're saving 1.1%, but we're doing that 6 times, right? So we're that multiplies, right? You're talking about $150,000 of savings almost on 6 different line items. So yes, there's some upfront cost, but the leveraging is getting these little 1% reductions. So they're like 99%. And, on the other side, it's improving it, right?
Yeah,
increasing the performance. Yeah.
Is that like when you say you're saving 1.1%? Is that like over an aggregate over years? Like we're saving X number of hours of work, or implementing this thing? Because I mean, some of it's like you said, buy a license for MDR or something like that. I mean, implementation costs. Are you including things like implementation costs? Are you what it takes to maintain this thing, or training, and all that budget is included?
Right. All of that's included. So what I've really focused here is that like this component is only one of several things, right? I've built cloud audit tools that walk, users through the questions, and it's focused on stages and phases, right? And that is, I actually think this will be. Let's take a look at this. Do we see a Figma?
I see a wow.
A
I'm
bunch of stuff.
gonna need some zooming in. We're like
Zoom in. Here we go.
150,000 feet. There you go. Okay.
Okay, so on that, right? What I did is I mapped the software and product lifecycle to jobs that happen, right? So this is acquisition all the way through
Uh-huh.
disposal. And what this tool as a whole does is it lets a company integrate that strategic compliance part, right?
Uh-huh.
And really start to understand the operations, the tactical side with technology, people, and process, and distill this, right? This is the part we want people to understand. Who does what job, how, why, and the circumstances around it. And
Okay.
what we can do when we use that risk management framework is really figure out what team is doing that work, who they are, and like, is this something that's important to do, right? We talked earlier about vulnerabilities, and like, again, is every control something that you need to go and flip? Maybe not, right? It
Right.
could just be
Oh,
and that's it. So I like to bring awareness, awareness, understanding, and execution to doing these types of projects.
what's the beware part? Is it be aware or beware?
It I was trying to get it to say awareness, but so it's being aware is what I will fix this to. But
Oh yeah.
we want to,
Sorry,
yeah.
I don't spell well myself. So yeah, awareness makes sense. So yeah, so understand awareness and execution.
Mhm.
That fits fairly well into change management. I mean, you're bringing awareness to, or understanding to the organization that there's a problem.
Mhm.
Creating a desire, I think, is where you need to help them understand that the impact, the risk is part of that. I'm using a change management methodology called ADKAR: awareness, desire, knowledge. Crap, I'm not good at acronyms. Ability, and then reinforcement. So yeah,
Mm.
that's what comes. So um, how hard is it to help them want to change? I mean, I'm assuming as a consultant, you have to come in and kind of sell yourself as helping them save money, helping them get better at something. When they ask you to come in, are you coming in like pre-audit, or are you coming in to help audit? I mean, what is the relationship like for you? I'm just trying to figure out if it's adversarial or if it's not adversarial, and they really are bringing you in to fix things because they're aware and they have a
Yeah.
desire. What does that look like for you
You
normally?
know, most of my engagements have been organizations that want to change, that are
Okay.
looking for some sort of you know, hey, we think that there might be something else we need to do different. Um,
Right.
and I've done that other work where it's after, like, oh, we've had something and we need help cleaning things up, and that's a different relationship. And I think
Right.
the biggest part and the best thing to ask in this industry is, tell me about what you do, and ask them how do they feel about doing it, right? Because some people will tell you, oh, I dread doing this because it's not clear. And other people will tell you, oh, I love to do it because I understand it. This is my bread and butter. And I think when we ask those questions, we really get to bring that understanding, right? We could say, okay, we understand what's going on, and some things are not always a people problem, right?
Right.
Some things are a privacy or security problem. And I think what we don't do enough in the industry is systems of systems analysis. And we can walk through this a little bit too.
Yeah, I'm interested in. You said systems of systems analysis. Is
Exactly.
that like a threat model of processes or something like that?
Yeah, that would be a good parallel. Think about, you've got a malicious email that gets all the way through all your security things. The user clicks it, right? It's not the
Right.
user's fault. Something happened. And what we have to consider is that design model, right? And if you don't want to take a technical approach to this, think of your um think of a pickup truck, right? Whatever pickup truck is your favorite brand, but don't just tell me it's a truck, right? Try to put it together with ideas and averages in your head. So I don't know if anyone is following along, but think of like how you would describe a pickup truck. And then
Okay.
we're gonna start to draw it, right? Draw it out in your head, get a piece of paper. We go through that design space, and then we get the actual system. So is it a firewall? Is it malware analysis? Is it that pickup truck? Doesn't matter. But that actual system is impacted by a variance, change, and time, right? For that truck reference, maybe that truck is in the snow, but it doesn't have, snow tires on it. The
Right.
manufacturer said it can have snow tires, but they didn't ship it with that because they didn't make for those variances or account for the time. So that's our
Okay.
actual system. And then what we go to is the operator model. And we're going to back out a little bit. And the operator model is impacted by the system, which changes by experience, improvements, and metrics, right? Those are those meetings in your organization, the growth. Oh, we don't use that, or make this change, new software, right? So these
Right.
these components go in there. And then we have our operations, right? Every day we've got the operations, procedures, training, and that's where operators are working on reality and consequences, right?
Right.
And
So some of this sounds like your design model would be like figuring out business requirements for your system, or what is the expected behavior of the process, or the expected outcomes of these things, figuring these things out ahead of time, and then figuring out over time should those things change.
yeah.
What it's an iterative process, right? For some of this, like the processes will change over time, whereas instead of like you have a device that does this thing, it may not necessarily change over time, but that
Right.
I'm yeah, that makes a lot
It's
that
kind
makes
of
sense.
it's kind of like when the iPhone came out and everybody was happy to have the little lighter app on it, and everybody
Yes.
thought that was really cool. And
Yeah.
now we have really interesting tools that are available on our iPhone,
Right. Right.
you know.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. So when you go to explain this to people, I mean, you what if they don't follow this methodology? Is there ways to, I don't say shoehorn, but I mean, you're following a specific framework or guideline, and how do you make this work for organizations that don't embrace this kind of thing, or maybe they haven't even heard of this? I had to go look up systems of systems analysis myself. I posted some of those
Yeah.
links in our chat. I'll have them in the podcast hopefully too. But I mean, what if they're not using this? What does this look like for them if it's a brand new thing? Do they, are they like shaking their heads and, oh yeah, this makes logical sense, but we're never going to use this? Is this part of the implementation where they have to embrace this kind of analysis, or what's the outcome here for them as a company to embrace this or not embrace
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. It's more so about just asking, have you had a problem with your information technology? And if you open with that question, somebody's going to say, "Yeah, this thing doesn't work." Right? And that's
Okay.
that's the first part of starting this journey. Okay, what's the thing that you use? It's a printer, it's a scanner, it's an old computer, or it's some software that our company uses, right? Maybe they use I don't know, ServiceNow, right? As an example. And like this is what we use, whatever that yeah.
I got pea
And
shivers just thinking about that. Ugh, gross.
and you know, it's better to ask them what are they using and what are they hoping for the outcome, right? And a
Right.
lot of companies they need substantially less than what they have, right? People need email and they need a chat. And that's really the first sort of thing to figure out, okay, where are email, chat, and calendar happening for your company? And
Mm.
what project management do you do, right? Do you have a project management strategy? And there's great tools. One of the components I really enjoy about Monday.com is it plugs into all the fancy things, right? It plugs in if there is a project management tool out there, it probably works with it.
Mm.
So I like to start it by understanding what their problem is, and then uh, understanding where that company wants to go, right? Um, I I don't show them anything immediately, right? It's discovery. It's asking what problems
Mm,
they're having, what
okay.
tools they're using, and then looking at, okay, how much does that cost you? And how much would you want to save on that, right? Are they looking for cost savings, or are they super capital rich and it doesn't matter about cost, they want performance? And
Right.
those are two separate conversations, right?
Right.
Hey, we're lean and we want performance and we want to spend the least systems. That's different than we can afford a $500,000 engagement and we'll buy your tools, appliances, you know, there's a checkbook. So understanding, is the value they want from this system about improvement, or is it about a savings? Or maybe it's
Right.
both.
Right. So, okay. So question here, what I'm hoping your answer is something logical, but let's say you come in and you're like, I can save you all this money. You just have to get rid of your whole ticketing system that you're using currently and move over to this other system. I guarantee you it's going to solve you a lot of time and effort. Um, what happens if they're, yeah, your Monday.com looks really pretty and everything, but we already have this and
Hmm.
we're going to stick with this. So, I mean, what does it look like? You can't just, I'm not, I don't just get up one morning and go, yeah, let's replace Jira. Let's just replace all of our Atlassian shit with
Right.
new shit that we'll have to train and build up and lost productivity and time. So if a team doesn't want to go the Monday.com or the Figma route,
Mhm.
what do you tell them? What do you help them understand? And I don't mean in like, you're going to have to move over to this if you want to make these savings. Do you just take what they have already and how do you help them improve that?
Yeah, so when they if an organization just wants to improve what they have, you know, then we figure out who's using it and what is making those problems happen, right? Is it because the software is out of date? Is it because users aren't trained? Because realistically,
Right.
that's fine. If somebody has a tech stack that works for them, it's in place, it's mature, everybody from the organization knows it. It's not the time to pivot, right? But
Right.
it might be time to look at, is your user team documentation good? Is there, you know, uh, is there a place where information can be exchanged? You know, and like my recommendation for a lot of companies is just start a group, right? On whatever your communication platform is, Teams or Slack, and just put something in there where people can say, I'm having a problem with this, and bring that up in a deep dive, right? Bring that up when teams are working together and say, hey, can we work together and solve this problem?
Hmm.
And um, you know, again, sometimes companies pick something and it works great for them, and that's wonderful. But there's still people who don't know how to use it, and I think what a lot of companies miss is standardizing where information is, right? Making your desktop an actual launch pad for what you're doing, setting up tools, making it so policies and procedures, for a company that doesn't want to pivot, I say just make sure your policies, process, and procedures are accessible on every machine. And how hard would that be? Hire somebody, write those out, and put them on whatever tool you want to use, GitHub,
Right.
GitBooks, and just make sure that everybody can go to their desktop and find that without having to dig real deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
What, so th- I'm not geeking out a little bit, but I am a PM where I am. So, I've run through my management and leadership courses here that I'm dealing with. And one of the things we came up with was root cause analysis. And I think you touched a little bit on that because you were like,
Yeah.
yeah, we need to figure out, where the problems are or how they got to. How does, how does doing things like root cause analysis help you get to the kernel of truth, or figure out where is the starting point in this, and do you have any
Yeah.
kind of tips for folks that are using or having to do a root cause analysis, or the root cause analysis may be post breach, or it might be we've got a major. Does John does not work at Monday.com. He does
Right.
not get endorsed by it. It's just a
Nope.
tool that he uses for risk management framework in this case.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, thanks, Digital Warrior. Appreciate that. Just in case somebody showed up a little later here. So it's just a tool that he uses, not the tool that can be used. So
Right.
um, yeah. So I mean, what
Um,
does root cause look like for you? Not just from a Kanban board or whatever, Um,
yeah. So
I mean, what if the problem is cultural? Like, hey, we don't have good, we're siloed out the ass, and we don't communicate between teams, and it's like that's how we do things.
yeah, I think for the root cause analysis, there there's a whole series of questions that you have to answer. And if you there's a book called Engineering a Safer World. And for anybody else who's interested, I would say go buy that book. It's worth the money. I think it's about 40 or 50 bucks in print. Wonderful book. And they focus on asking how to ask root cause analysis questions to not get stuck at blame of a person, but examining where that failure is.
Mm.
Engineering a Safer World. I don't know the name of the author.
I've already
So
I've already posted it
yeah,
up in chat. So
cool. Thanks.
yeah.
So oftentimes, if we're just going to be talking about root cause analysis with cyber activities, I like to use a chart similar to this, where this red line is what that malicious cyber actor is doing, right? Because that there's always going to be some chance that somebody gets through what you've put up, right? But
Right.
what we want to do is raise that opportunity cost, and we want them to abandon their efforts. And then we want to move to prevention. And a lot of people, when you just say, "Hey, how can we prevent this from happening?" There's lots of people who have good ideas. I worked I worked in the financial tech sector for a bit, and they had the best training for phishing emails I had ever seen. Right, 99% of the employees understood how to report phishing emails. That every single one that got through, they were reporting. And
Hmm.
that was about awareness, right? That was teaching people what to look for, really working with the customer service team almost on a daily basis, right? People think that security should be like this siloed group, but they should be working with everybody to train them about how does this computer work, what's secure, um, and how to do that. So like sometimes those prevention ideas can come from your customer service reps. They
Right.
they understand the customers, they understand the environment, and if you can say, "Hey, if you ever see an email that looks kind of like this, just push this button that says or report fish." Man, they, all we're doing is pushing buttons on screens. So, gamify it to a degree. I'm not saying to go out and have, you know, pizza parties, but put that in your reports. Put that in what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, so is that a design a decision? It's like if
Yeah.
the difference between reporting a tweet, not a tweet, but an email that looks weird is something like a plugin in Outlook where you can say report fish, whereas
Yeah.
in another company it's like if you want to report a fish, you have to reply all to the fish and
Yeah.
remove the person they sent you the email from the two, and
Yeah.
it really depends on usability, right? And how comfortable or how you can design something that works for you. I mean, we're working on, migrating some people over for some of our systems here, and we're interviewing our stakeholders because, we're
Mhm.
trying to build awareness, build desire, build knowledge, trying to get people to buy into our system. And they're like, yeah, the old system is garbage, but it's always been garbage. And I was like, yes, it's nothing none of us don't already know. And they're like, well, we're going to move off of that onto our own system that we're going to create. And I was like, that's not good.
Right.
Probably shouldn't do that. And I'm trying to help sell I actually I hate it. I hate it because I've become a product manager here, but it's one of those things where you have to sell, and like you're doing the same thing. You're having to sell the solution that you're, and whether it be Monday.com or whatever it is, but you're trying to sell to them a solution and helping them understand why the way that you want to do it is better. But for us, it's like, oh yeah, we can take your input and actually make this better. And you may still want to use your ticketing system, but there's really good reasons why you should come over here and let us do this for you, because you've got you're going to lose time building your own system out, and you've got specific deadlines. So being able to sell that as a solution or a mitigation or an adaptation or abandoning what you're currently doing in this case, it makes a lot of sense from a and that's it's almost like the root cause in reverse. It's like, okay, we want to
Hmm.
get back to where, what is the bare minimum that you need to work? What is the kernel of truth that you need to follow through with in this case? And then we can help
Yeah.
you move forward. In this case, it was like, well, we need parity with what the old system was, which wasn't much. And I was like, I agree. And then we can move on from there. So being able to get to that kernel of truth, it's like, what do you need to come over and join us? And I think I don't want to say that's what marketing is. Maybe that is, but it's like getting people to the kernel of what they need, and then they'll take all the other stuff as well. It just feels
Yeah.
really weird there. So
I think a lot of that goes to people buy things based on value, not on cost.
right,
That's that emotional component, and
right,
you really have to like anybody could put any system and even do a whole organization migration. But you have to understand what are the values, and some orgs that you work with are top down driven, and that manager is going to say, I like your product, and you're probably going to have an interesting experience working with those teams. um,
right,
but understanding the value and understanding what they want out of it, right? Again, is it,
right,
hey, this solves our problem because we have a communication problem and we just want to communicate in one place? Well, that's how you highlight the what you're bringing to the. There's
yeah,
nothing out there. Come here.
right.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Oh yeah, no worries. Dog.
this is true.
Oh, as a dog. Very
See,
nice.
I think a lot of those things go to value, and you have to understand what is the people that you're working with, what do they want out of your presence? Did they hire you because
Yeah.
they just somebody said you got to be compliant and they don't get it, or is it
Yeah.
they want to improve their organization?
Right. And like you said, sometimes you're being asked to help get things compliant by somebody, and then you're not actually dealing with those people. You're dealing with the people that don't want to actually, or, they have their own deadlines. So they're trying to work through those deadlines at the same time. Oh, here's an interloper coming in to help me
Hmm.
show how I'm doing everything wrong. And the whole profit or the whole value in is what's in it for me. What
Right.
do I get out of that? What is the value created by doing these things? And value creation is was another part of that org leadership that a class that I was doing. But yeah, I mean, you have to show how you're going to save them time, money, effort,
Hmm.
resources, how you can do more after this or whatever. You have to find that carrot. So
Yeah.
um, yeah. These are some. Did you make all of these? Is this part of your?
Yeah.
This is
I have
part of
been
your
putting.
deliverables or your sales package for folks to
It
come in and do
is.
things.
It is.
Holy
It's the whole component. If we want to take a dive into the CCE kill chain, we can look at that too. I think
I'm
that's
sorry,
pretty
the
cool.
CCE kill chain. What's the
Yeah, this
CCE
is
stand for?
uh cyber informed consequence driven kill chain, and this is great for that SCADA
That's
environment.
new.
Yeah, Internet of Things. Um, really, really a great place to start. Um, so I don't know. Do we can talk about this? We can let me know.
I I don't. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I was
Yeah.
looking for CCE kill chain. Is this something you've created yourself for engagement purposes? Is this your own methodology, or is this a standardized against some sort of NIST requirements or anything?
This is some research that's from the NIST. It's not a standard. There was some research out of, I think, Idaho, and it's consequence driven, cyber informed.
Okay,
Uh, and
consequence. Okay,
yeah, and this just is the visual for going through those phases. With phase one, you define those events. And these are events that, fire, earthquake, whatever that is. Then we determine cyber events and then put that on a scoring matrix, right? Using
Okay.
using the other tool on Monday.com, we can really start to quantify and put a number and say, give some numbers to this. And then we go to phase two, where it's information gathering. And that's where we focus on getting diagrams, interviews, and manuals for that system description, right? What piece of
Okay.
equipment do you work on? Where's the manuals? What, and then asking those questions of the users of that system. We go back to the boundary condition, define the technical approach, and targeting details. Now we'll go over to targeting details real quick. Um, so what we're looking for is what that high consequence event is, right? Is it the DDoS? Is it the, we can corrupt the malware, or, dump the running config, or whatever that high consequence is that we want to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
And we write out our attack scenarios, 1 through N, whatever that is. And then there's two sides here, right? There's this technical approach where we talk about access, actions, timing, and triggering. And that's really where we're, this is going to be great for somebody who's working on a very scoped penetration test, right? You're
Right.
doing OSCP, you can't, you're doing something that if you turn this pump off, there's going to be a sewage problem, right? Like, we
Right.
really want to understand those components. We build the details of the hardware, right? Ranging from hardware all the way through the function of what that system is. Is it a switch, a pump? Who knows? And then go back, do you have enough details? No. Do more of that footprinting, right? Within the scope and the boundaries that you can do. Update your database. And then when you've got that, you move back to, you have your critical needs, and then you can work on deployment and development, right? You're
Okay.
leveraging resources, whatever that is. So we come back, we're on this other part. You have your targeting profiles wherever those are stored, right?
Mm-hmm.
Focus on those critical needs, run through your attack scenarios, practice with payloads, and determine, did that high consequence event actually happen?
Right.
You
So
know,
I actually have the inl.gov/CCE because I found it, Idaho
yeah,
National Labs, so, or National Laboratory.
yeah,
Um, so you mentioned, so if you could scroll back over where you were
sure.
talking about attack scenarios, on that part. There you go.
Yeah.
Who makes the attack scenarios? Who's involved in this? Because this very feels very tabletopy, right?
Yeah.
So this like an IR tabletop where you're, attack scenario, we got fished, or
Mhm.
somebody's poisoned the water hole, that kind of thing. Um, who's involved in these attack scenarios? Is this very much IR tabletop kind of feeling where you bring in all, multiple stakeholders, or you go, you're going through this, hey, we should have invited media to this, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I would say this these scenarios need to be done with your threat management team, and understand, what is it a right fit, right? Uh, if you are, I guess it's understanding who the attackers are for the industry you're in. This type of stuff, I like to work with stakeholders, and then I also like to work with technical teams. So that way we can understand, what does the stakeholder know to be a risk to the organization? What does the
Okay.
technical team know to be a risk? And then you can sort of put those two things together. There's going to be some overlap, right? Oh,
Right.
ATP one is going to bother us. Well, we can take what their behaviors are like. We can look at that telemetry, and we can say, where can we start to generate this early enough? And a lot of orgs, they don't generate that telemetry early. It's missing, it's lacking. There's no logs that are being generated from a machine. And
Right.
how do you do defer if nothing is logged?
Right. So you mentioned AP2, and we made the joke about AP2 one before the podcast started here, or this Twitch stream. Um, so I can imagine. I don't know who you mentioned quite a few folks, including SCADA and ICS and IoT folks. So you come in and go, hey, we'll just, we'll set this thing up, we'll do this thing. We just need your threat management team. And they're like, well, we don't have one.
Mhm.
Or, our MSP is doing all of that for us, or our MSSP is doing all of that for us. Um, how does it work when you have to bring in third parties? Like, we don't, everything is done out of house, our IT, our security and stuff like that. How does it work for teams that are not in house for you?
That depends mostly if it's written in scope that I can work with them.
Okay. Okay.
But if it is, it's setting up that engagement and looking and walking through some of these exercises, right? If it's a really good MSSP, they should be able to say, "Hey, we know the threat actors and we know that these are the vulnerabilities," right?
Right.
Their first conversation should be, "Well, we've already considered and planned for this. Here's our last tabletop exercise. Here's our results. Here's our IR plan." And really, that conversation could just be, examining and running through some scenarios, right? Take a mock device or a mock-up of what you're doing, virtualize it, and just try those things, if they're possible to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so the way I've seen with a lot of IR tabletops is eventually everything goes up to about the same level. Once you start, we need to notify people, or a lot of the same attack scenarios will end up, following some of the same paths either way. But so what are they supposed to get out of the CCE process when they're done? Is this a IR playbook or a process playbook that they would follow? Is this what you will use to inform the rest of your discussions about improving the organization? Are the attack scenarios not necessarily attack scenarios, but like, here's what's, if you continue using, your current Confluence, methodologies, does it have to be always, bad guys or anything like that? Can it be, can you adapt this to other processes or procedures in your environment?
Yeah. It's adaptable. I think it's important to understand, this model is going to look different based on the motivation of what could be an attack in your environment, right? Is it we have a lot of disgruntled employees because they're not happy, right? That's a different attack model than a nation state actor really wants to disrupt our milk production from our dairy farm.
Right.
So yeah, this, and I think the important part is about this CCE component is this is not for a whole inventory of your entire system, right? It's not a complete inventory. It is an evaluation of the cyber aspect at components in your business that would cause an outage, right? So it's not, oh, the switch is going to make it for, the or whatever. The printer doesn't work. Your business is still going to function. You can probably call FedEx or Kinko's and print there.
Right.
This is, your main system that everybody needs every day needs to work.
Right.
So this is the high level systems, right? This is what is a critical asset, and critical means that when this device is interrupted, that operation stops.
Okay.
Slack is down for an hour. That's probably not going to stop your business. But if your, identity access management solution is out for 2 days, well, that's a much different problem.
Right. Right. And I could see where you would definitely want to have as many stakeholders as possible, because like you said, hey, you might be the management. Hey, our Slack is down. Oh, that's, whatever. I won't be able to, talk to people for an hour. The developers are like, well, Slack is down. That's how all of our bot automations go through and lets us know when things are going bad or something like that. So in my opinion, as, head of development, Slack going down is muy bad for me.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something where you need to identify stakeholders. You need, and I think anybody who's done an IR tabletop will see that as well, but it's like, you can't afford to forget people, because if you forget someone, and like I said, if you don't include the director of engineering in, and, oh yeah, Slack's not a big deal. Yeah. No, Slack is a huge deal for some people, where it's not so much for others. But yeah. Cool. Any other fun frameworks you use? I've never heard of CCE, so I've got that one down in my Slack to go and poke at for a while.
Yeah, that's probably the most interesting. Mostly whenever I start something, I always use these structures, right? I start with practices and then I move to documentation. So
Hmm.
how we open this and you said, oh well, what frame like where do I start? I like the RMF. I feel like it's got the most behind it. It's really well parsed if you spend time on this website. So I like to pick a practice, my documentation, and then these requirements, right? They go back to what is that value that somebody's looking for. I want
Right.
improvement. I want cost savings. I want people to stop bothering my help desk. All of those are values, right?
Okay.
um, and then figure out what that design is, right? Is that
Right.
design this company wants to rip everything out? They don't want any more of what they had. They're tired of old. They want new. That's wonderful, right? And you're going to have a different thing. If you have that
Right.
company that's got the old guard, they're happy with the way things are, then you design what you're doing to fit that, right? And you make sure
Yeah.
that people are understanding. You work through implementation, verification, and maintenance. And really, this um, this platform has let me work that and understand, at a high level, if we think about the risk management framework as like Dungeons and Dragons or something, right? Just imagine these parentheses are enhancements, right? And you
Okay.
probably can't choose 10 without choosing number one, right?
Yeah.
So, I've wanted to make it so people can understand like how does this tie together? What can we do? And I'll show this last part. So on this timeline, we have an interesting component. But we can change how important something is. So if we group this by the board, right, we can see at a high level a different information about what we were talking about, right? We
Right.
can see something was due in September, and we can see like these are selected, these are validated, but what we don't see is if it's important, right? And we can label by,
Yeah.
and we can just add that importance. And I think that oh, we have some highs. We just remembered that those were selected. That work was in November. We're in December. That's the work that we need to get done compared to some of these lows. It doesn't matter if a low thing didn't get done, for project
Right.
management.
Right.
So
Are you showing any kind of critical path on this? So, sorry for those of you
yeah,
who don't do PM related work. Critical path is, like these things have to be done in this order. They can't be parallelized. Like you see here, he's got like three high things on his list that can be done at the same time or around the same time. There might be some conditionals there where it's like this one has to end before this one can start. There's actually three different ways that can happen, like start to finish, start to start, finish to start. There's some really weird ones, but like certain dependencies in this case, dependencies, there you go, like software
hmm
dependencies. You can't build the application without these dependencies. Some may, you may have sub dependencies or dependencies upon dependencies. So does this measure like critical path? I mean, I'm assuming you're doing that to kind of show, oh, there you go. There's your critical
yep,
path.
yep. We can. I haven't done the critical path on this build, but it is a feature that's available. And I liked it for
Yeah.
what it did. It really
Yeah.
let you kind of highlight like, oh, we do have a high, but this high is all of a sudden dependent on this low, right? And
Right.
again,
Right.
now that's part of our project management. It's where things get overlooked. And
Yeah.
I think that I think the important part is to realize is that all of these primary controls, most of them have other dependencies on them, right? And we can
Right.
start to see that when we look through this. Remote access has 20 other related controls. So no
Right.
wonder we have a problem connecting VPNs because there's 20 more controls that you need to do.
Right. So you've mentioned like various controls, and so if you have a high that is dependent on a low, it's no longer a low, right? It's a high as
Right,
well.
right.
And as a matter of fact, it trumps that high, so it might be a priority 0 versus the priority 1, which is the other one. Um, So you mentioned something that was kind of funny there, where you're like, you were talking about, I start with practices and documentation requirements, and you mentioned somebody's calling me in because they, the ultimate goal is for them to not have their help desk being hit up so often. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'd be asking for root cause at that point. Why is your help desk being kicked up hard? It's like, well, we have a
Yeah.
bunch of tickets. Well, why do you have a bunch of tickets? Do you ever walk in and ask those kinds of questions and then find out, well, the reason that you're getting hit up for your help desk too often is because, it's something that's 5 levels back and completely innocuous. But if they just fixed that, they would have
Hmm.
less help desk discussions. Like maybe there's a
All the
bot
time.
that's generating a bunch of bullshit tickets and the people are reaching out because they don't know what to do with those tickets. So they're hitting up the help desk, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. All
Um,
the time. Everything is always, the other day I had some work with an input device, and the input device was only scanning to, one aspect of the business. And that input device just needed to be configured different, right?
uh,
Everybody else had a new way to use it. Everybody else had their own idea. And um, the more simple you make it for somebody to use a computer system, the better. If you can
right,
get it to just be green or blue or red, and it's just like push the blue button and then
right.
follow the prompts, those are things that can really help. So yeah, so many things are again, there's some other, like you said, there's a bot that's creating a bunch of tickets, or there's something that's generating a lot of work because it's like, I
Right.
like to do this,
Yeah.
dial that back and figure out what that reason is.
Yeah. Okay. So before we started the podcast, I'd asked you if this was open source, and you were like, "It's getting there." So
Yeah,
I'm assuming that this is in some kind of exportable format, like a spreadsheet or something that you could use to put this in. Monday.com in this case just creates some kind of fancy looking template or what have you. Um, how would people find, I'm assuming this is based off of which NIST format or ISO format did you talk about? ISO
uh,
27000?
this is the RMF, so this is 853, everybody's favorite.
Oh, 800-53. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so, uh, uh, anybody have any questions? It's been kind of quiet in chat. Oh, well, I'm not playing video games, so Twitch is sometimes unkind to those of us that
Sure.
and to be honest, risk management's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think it's something that we we tend to forget. I really wish that information security folks were a bit more in the project management kind of methodologies, like the risk, the root cause analysis and stuff, because we tend to want to solve the help desk problem by hiring more help desk. If you want to fix the help desk, hire more help desk people. Do you really need to fix the help desk problem, or is it
Hmm.
something back here that could be fixed?
Right.
It's like we see the one in front of us and we want to solve that problem. Never mind, coming back here, fixing the pattern. Shifting left in this case is not
Right.
always a DevOps thing. It's
Right.
the shifting left could be earlier in the timeline of the problem itself, which it took me, I don't know, 20 years to figure out what shift left really meant. It wasn't fixing DevOps. It wasn't being agile or whatever. It was figuring out where the root cause is that opens up the problems that we have right here, back here.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. And I think with lean and agile and any of those methodologies, it's it's a methodology. It doesn't mean that everything has to be called a stand up. You can call things a meeting. And just integrating those concepts to where you are, it
right,
because sometimes when you say I'm gonna do lean, right? People say, oh, I don't want to do lean. That sounds complex. But if
right,
you build a flow, right? I I found that, Google Forms, anywhere that you can create a form for working with teams on meetings is probably the best improvement. And
right,
that's something that I can do from here, right? I can create a form and I could start to send this form out and update a table, right? We could parse
mm,
this down across all of those options. So like you were saying earlier, how would you get feedback? How would you build this out? I'll just send a form, right? Answer two or three
yeah,
questions, and um, you can make you can understand where your project is. do the people understand, and do you have that buy-in by just asking a couple questions like, hey, update this thing, it'll take you 30 seconds.
Right.
And
Right.
using that with your people, your employees, especially when you've got if you're on an engineering team and you have a massive amount of work and you're working on all these components, little quizzes are sometimes easier than trying to sit in and meet a whole meeting, because you might be the only engineer on a team with a couple
Yeah.
developers. So um,
Yeah.
that's just one of the benefits of why I picked this to start working on this. So
Yeah.
I'm working on getting licenses generated. Is it possible I can put a quick call to help or resources? Um,
For what? To build this out or what?
yeah, I put together. I don't have any UX skill to put the rest of this together to actually put it on the Monday.com marketplace. So if there's anybody in the
Ah.
world that has those,
Well, you could definitely reach out on our Slack or Discord.
well,
We don't normally have contractors,
yeah,
but I do know that if you're looking for some 1099 work, I'm sure somebody could help you out with that, or whatever.
well, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah. Speaking of which, how would people find you if they wanted to reach out and talk to you more about management frameworks, or they've seen the stream here and they're
Yeah.
interested in maybe wanting to help you, make this, better.
Yeah. WhalenEnterprise.com. WHALEN enterprise.com.
And so this is this exportable to something that, maybe I don't want to use Monday.com. So
Yep.
could I use a spreadsheet? Is it a nice fancy, is there a nice okay, so export board to Excel. How well does that
Yep.
work in Excel? How many macros do you have to deal with in Excel
Oh, it's perfect.
for this thing to work?
It's flawless.
Come on now. Come on. No, no. That's a filthy lie. And
it does a really good job of exporting to Excel and making it a useful piece of data.
PDF is the worst. I can't believe it's XLS or PDF. That's just awful.
Yeah, normally what I do is I export it to Excel and then I just convert it to CSV, and I can parse it in a whole bunch of other languages there.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about some kind of exportability or being able to take your JSON or XML blob and parsing it out and does it have automation? I mean, if you're putting this in a spreadsheet, or could you use it in I'm trying to figure out if you could, once you export it to XLS, you could put it into Google Drive or a Google Doc there, or a spreadsheet in there, and run macros or what have you off of that as well. So, for those of you who are like, oh my God, I have to use Monday.com, if you, hit up John on our Discord or Slack or what. Are you on our Slack?
I'm in both. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hit him up on there and, just, see if, how you can help out. Cause I'd imagine, like I said, adoption to something completely different. Cause some companies, larger ones, will already have a GRC tool, or will already have some kind of system. Actually, I think we've had a couple people on the show here who was like, if you don't have a GRC tool, Excel makes a perfectly decent Excel, GRC tool.
Right.
My experience with GRC tools is they always forget one thing, right? And usually it's vulnerability management,
right?
Or vulnerability or information security type metrics or process or whatever. And it's like, you always need something else,
Yeah.
And security pretty much gets left out of the GRC environment, which is ironic that is the case. But like the larger ones like Archer and them, I don't know if they've gotten better in the last few years, but yeah, they're kind of a pain in the ass. And the minute somebody finds out you're looking for a GRC tool, you have no shortage of spam in your inbox. Hey, we've got a tool, you should hook that up. So going back to this, you've got your critical path here, at least, or your implementation, low, mediums, and highs are over the course of several months, it looks like. Are companies looking for quick wins when they come in? It's like, oh, you're going to solve our problems during the 2 weeks you're here. What does that look like? Most people have a pen test. They're there for a couple weeks.
Hmm.
either on site or virtually, remotely. And, I've heard stories where people say, hey, I've done a pen test. I come back in and the same artifacts are sitting on a server somewhere and they didn't do shit. Or the
Yeah.
same Jira tickets I wrote a year ago are still in Jira waiting to be fixed. So, what are your expectations with them? It's like, I mean, how does that communication go in terms of expectations? Are they expecting you to solve all the problems in the 2 weeks you're there? Or do you leave them with like a list of to-dos and here's my phone number. If you get stuck, let me know. I charge $3.50 an hour or something like that.
It's more so the latter. A lot of times, right? It's about not boiling the whole ocean, and I wrote a whole training and education program that maps to this risk management framework that educates users, employees, and whatnot. But um, the the things here is this helps kind of highlight when something should be important, right? If we see that we
Mm-hmm.
have this project and we're working on it from October through almost December, maybe let's figure out how we can. Everybody says, let's do security training. You do the same, really not fun presentation every time, right? And
Right.
you're like, I know this. So maybe we talk about let's train our staff on security and privacy attributes. What does that look like, right? And who needs to be aware of it? So i
Right.
think i think a lot of it is more so looking at where your organization is, understanding, uh for this company or this example here, right? We see December, like we need to count. Let's not put any projects here, right? Let's not
Right.
put any more projects. And um we focused on the mediums in this example before we did the highs, get some, like you
Right.
said, critical path out of the way. So
Yeah.
um, I think when companies can kind of say, hey, we have a really good bead on what is actually important to us, right? And why it's important. And this sort of takes those fears out of somebody's how are we going to get it done, right? Because let's
Right.
just say this control I'm over, it was failed or it's not done. We can also just go ahead and set this up in January right now, and
Mm.
we don't have to send any more emails. um, I ran a lot of automation components on this, so it updates my Slack, um, and it'll say this is moved or this is updated, and it really gets nice and granular for that. So
Yeah.
I it's doing the risk management framework without having to write an email. And at
Right.
the end of this, I'll just show this really cool feature: generate report. This every single line here gets written into a nice little thing, and I can send it right to my email or right to my Slack channel, and
Mm.
you'll understand your RACI chart, right? You'll understand your tuning for it, right? If you're working in like signals, components, or spans. So
Right.
um,
Well, that
it
is,
it
yeah,
was
that
yeah.
that's a nice bit of logic there. Moving those things out though. I mean, do you have project managers? I mean, I'd imagine somebody who isn't versed in project management doesn't understand a Gantt chart, or doesn't see a lot with a Gantt chart. So, maybe a dev manager or somebody planning sprints or what have you.
Mhm.
What does that mean? Can if they move it and there's a critical path issue, or this is a
Right.
dependency upon another dependency. I mean, can I mean, do you allow for leeway, or I mean, is this being fairly generous? Like you got November 15th to the 22nd. Is it actually going to take 7 days for them to finish this thing, or is that just based on your own estimations and guidelines?
Yeah, just my own estimation and guidelines. Any org could do more or less, but
Yeah.
this is just an example between the components to show
Right.
the functions. But when you
Yeah.
turn on critical path and you move something, it'll give you a prompt and it'll say, "Hey, this is a critical path that these other dependencies are going to adjust." So
Right. Yeah, because when
yeah,
you move this one out from January to 2023,
right,
your critical path or the top part there went out to 82 days. So
right, right.
yeah, so that makes sense. So
So
cool. Anybody have any questions? Project DP, thank you for coming and hanging out and following us here. I don't know if you actually do project management. It's in the name, I guess, but
right.
yeah. I think it's important to know that, this is just one method of
Yeah.
doing things. I mean, you can definitely do this in a spreadsheet. I mean, I've seen some fairly in-depth spreadsheets that can be done with this. Ideally, the best thing to start out is with what you have. So,
Yeah.
yeah, those are definitely something you can do. But anybody have any questions about managing the risks or what have you? I mean, the biggest problem I have is with making dashboards in all. I who
Yeah.
what I'd love to have metrics wise on my dashboard is who has looked at my dashboard.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
that
Yeah.
that
We
would be
need
the
to.
kind of metrics I would like to have, because I'd like to have a whole dashboard full of shit, and then it'd be like the last one is who's logged in and looked at this in the last 15 days.
Yeah.
Because my
Um,
my biggest problem with dashboards is I don't think anybody actually looks at them, and they're just for me to waste time trying to generate these things, and then nobody looks at them.
right.
I wish I didn't feel that way, but I don't have any other reason to believe it. When I go to meetings and somebody says, "Oh, what about this?" I was like, "It's in that nice fancy dashboard you asked for." You know,
Yeah.
I
You know
would
what?
really
That's,
like I would really like my work and my dashboard to actually be used.
this does export well with iframe. So you could put iframe and like Google Analytics on there. Um,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
that could be, obviously, make cognizant choices about what you convey about your business all the way to the internet. But
Right,
um,
right. And I was thinking
yeah,
if you use like a Google Drive or Google
yeah,
Docs or Google Sheets or something like that, find some kind of plugin that allows you to say, well, this page has been viewed by these people in the last week or something like that.
yeah,
If that's something you can do in your environment, or
yeah. And
track
of course,
changes. Yeah,
right. Look
yeah,
at what third party integrations you choose and why you choose them, and
yeah. Be
if that
safe
should
with that.
be,
Yeah,
yeah,
be safe.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So do you also do vendor management? I'm not, wow. Oh yeah, we're over my normal 1 hour and 30 minute time frame, but, do you also do, consulting, not, dashboard aside? Um,
right.
what if part of the solution is to, you have to bring in a third party? What are some of the things that you tell people when you say, well, you can do it in house,
Yeah,
or you can bring in a third party or an MSP, or endpoint security solution like a CrowdStrike that has a managed
right.
service portion on it. Um, do you give them any kind of hard and fast rules, or quick things to ask that, hey, if you're interviewing Carbon Black or CrowdStrike, ask them these things, that way you'll have a good idea, confidence as to what you're doing.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of resources for people to make sure they're getting the right fit for what they want. And I have a couple partners where I'm a reseller of different services. So it's sort of one of those
Okay.
questions, if somebody says, "Hey, that's cool that what you're doing, do you have something that you can resell and we can buy through you?" That's also
Oh,
fine, right? Um, I
sure.
I'm I want to help reduce some of those misconfigurations across the internet and just protect people's business, right? Like
Right, right.
there's lots of people who don't know that they need this. And granted, this tool could boil the ocean if you wanted it to.
Yeah.
But it could also just say, hey, like this is a great tabletop tool, right? What if we
Right.
had a new team and we said, how many controls failed on our test, right? So
Right.
there's lots of ways to use a tool for a function. And with a mature company, I would say use this for your tabletop exercises, right?
Right.
Don't pivot everything, but use this for an example of tabletop exercises. Practice that communication. Are the right people responsible? Are the right people accountable? Are you informing the right team? So uh, that's just another way that we can bring this solution around. And yeah, if anybody's interested in talking more about it, I'm in both the Discord and the Slack. Um,
Cool.
yeah,
Okay. All right. Well, John, appreciate your time.
yeah,
Yeah. Thanks to everybody who's gotten on here. I'll leave our Discord here in chat just for shits and giggles.
Yeah,
You know
and
what? I'll go ahead and put an invite to our Slack in the chat as well.
cool.
Discord's kind of better because I have a bot that actually allows things like what do they call that? Moderation. So it's like you have to accept the code of conduct before you can join the rest of the Discord. Slack doesn't have that, so we just kindly ask everybody to read and heed the social contract that we have. So one reason I enjoy Discord more is because there's more bots available on the free tier because everything's free. So so why start up the YouTube channel? What's your goal there, and why did you feel the need to do that? Is it an extension of your company, or are you wanting to just educate people?
I wanted to make it something where I could talk about how security is a lot more strategy than tactics. There's lots of tactics, but so much about it is really just making sure you have the right strategy for your company. And so I'm making short videos, right? 1 to 3 minutes, and just walking through policies and this stuff, that like get this stuff right before you want to be the most hardcore pen tester in the world, right? For anybody else who wants to get into pen test, get a job doing documentation, be a tech writer for a little bit, and then you'll learn those skills to really be a good penetration tester.
Very cool. Okay. Very nice. Any last thoughts from my folks who are on the chat? Also, like I said, if you're on the audio podcast listening to this in December 2022, you can reach out on our Slack or our Discord. I've had to start reminding myself that we have 10 years worth of podcasts, so things that I may have posted up into chat. I think our first couple episodes I actually had a phone number that you could try calling. So I think I had it on there all of about 3 times, and then I realized the only thing I get is spam calls, and I don't think it was because of the podcast, but it was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to use that anymore. So I ended up doing that way. But 2022 in December, John was on our Discord and Slack. They may or may not exist 5 years from now. I don't know what that looks like, but come and join and hang out. So cool. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time, Brian. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right. You have a good weekend. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
All right, later. Bye.